Two. So you go first. So it should be. It's already on. They'll mute it as you go. Kia ora tātou. Okay. Kia ora. Oh, very nice, you fellas. Thank you very much. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to this particular session, which could turn out to be one of the interesting sessions of the whole conference, simply because the events industry, of which I've been a part of from pretty much most of my life in one way, shape or form, is very complex. And it hasn't got any easier as the years have gone by. So the statement is really, so you want a career in the events industry? Big question mark. But if you do, it's very rewarding, I can tell you that. And to discuss the subject this afternoon, we have four people who are very enthusiastic about what they do, very knowledgeable about what they do, and at the end of it, at some stage, the floor will be open to questions, and I'd suggest that you pick their brains, because there's a lot of knowledge up here on the stage. So I'd like to welcome Mark Gibb from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Tracey Thomas, Conference Innovators, Drew Naika, Wellington Regional Economic Development Agency, and Melanie Walker from Avenues Event Management. Could you please give them a collective round of applause, please? So just to kick things off, I'd like to, each of the persons on the stage will talk to you very briefly and introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves. So first off, Melanie Walker from Avenues Event Management. Melanie?
Thanks. Hi everyone. So obviously I'm Melanie Walker. I run a company based in Wellington and Auckland called Avenues Event Management. And the purpose of today really is for you people considering a career in events management, is to give you, I guess, some depth and breadth because the events and conference and meeting industry is very broad, and there are a lot of different activities that go on within it. And so this is really meant to be a little 20-minute cross-section of some of the people that work in our sector. So myself, can I ask the question first? Did anyone watch the Academy Awards recently? Does anyone know what happened at the Academy Awards recently? So that to me, did you guys watch it? Yeah. Yeah. So that to me describes so much about what we do. There would have been thousands and thousands from an operational level, not to even talking strategically or media, live feed, 800 million people watching, politics, all of the things around that. There would have been thousands and thousands of pieces of detail for that event, but one person, or possibly two, took eye off ball, possibly a little bit of systemic failure as well, and that's what you have. You have a catastrophe of great proportions. I mean, no one died, but for the Oscar event, that was massive. And does anyone not know what happened? So when it came to the best picture, the wrong envelope was given to the two people coming out to read the award, and it was read out for the wrong film, and the entire cast and crew of the wrong film got up and started making their thank you speech before the producer of the show was able to intercept and correct it, but the damage had been done. So I think it is a good example of what can go wrong, and actually fortunately no one was even hurt, if not maybe emotionally hurt, but no one was physically hurt and no one was in danger. But these are the sort of things that happen, I guess, in the event industry. So so I started the business a long time ago, probably before some of you were born, and probably at a time when the conference, I guess the conference business was already going, but events were not really event managers, weren't really thought of. I think when we started we called ourselves event planners. So we work in the conference and event space. We organise lots of, like my colleague here, my peer, Tracey, we organise a lot of conferences in Wellington and around New Zealand, and we also work in the event space. So for me, when I'm looking to hire, I have never actually in my life found one person who can do everything in the event and conference space. We have people that come onto the team with different strengths, so I'm always looking, obviously being methodical and organised goes without saying at an operational level. Then we will have need people that we will bring into the company with other skills, like marketing skills, social media skills, problem-solving skills, creative skills. These are all attributes that we need in our business to do our daily business. So I'm always looking to, when I hire, I look for what else people can bring to the table as far as they might have their skills attribute, but in terms of team fit, I'm always looking for something extra, and it might be that someone will have started their life in a theatre background, for example, and I'll think that will be a good fit with that in our team. But that's how we hire, but it's not necessarily how everyone else hires. So it is at times, most often, a very demanding career. There are, I hope I'm not stealing everyone's lines, but for me, we all work in different sectors. There are absolute immovable deadlines, and generally underscoped. I feel that jobs always get bigger once we're contracted, and we can't move the date. We can't say, actually, we're not going to be ready by tomorrow, so can we have this event next Thursday? We just have to work harder and longer to get to our deadline. So that's probably enough from me. That gives you a once-over. We've got about 20 people in our business, or 24 if we include a couple of our part-timers. So that's my introduction. Tracey.
Thanks, Mel. Well done. My name is Tracey Thomas, and I'm a PCO, which is an industry jargon term for a professional conference organiser. I own a company called Conference Innovators, and we have an office in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch. My background, before I've been a PCO or a conference organiser now for 13 years, and before that my background is in hospitality. I was a hotel general manager for 15 years before that. So I still, when looking to recruit or give people advice of where they should start in this industry, I probably revert back to type, back to that hospitality background, because we're in business tourism. You've got to want to please people, have a really strong customer service focus. And one thing I like about what I do, and so I work in a specific sector, the association market of conferences, so domestic and international associations who need to convene every so often, have their annual general meeting, submit scientific or academic papers, have them reviewed, presented at conferences. Sounds really boring, doesn't it? But it is really, really interesting because I just get to engage with different interesting people. I'm currently working with a professor in Dunedin on the World Congress of Herpetology. Any close? Snakes. Pardon? Snakes. Yeah, snakes, frogs and lizards. And who knew? And you just learn interesting and sometimes useless stuff. What do you call a group of lizards? A lounge. Yeah, that's where the term lounge. But you just get, and the other term, I have one client that we manage their conference every year, the New Zealand Society of Oncology. I'm working with the convener, who is the scientist who's identified the gene that causes stomach cancer. And it's a pretty big deal. These guys, you get to engage with really in some case, world leaders in their field. So it's a really good, warm, fuzzy, you get a real sense of satisfaction helping people in a logistical sense present themselves at the best of their profession. And one thing I really like about the job too, the ability to create from start to finish. And it's project based, so the job is always going to finish and you're going to go on to another one. So there's a start and the end. It's never boring. I have a team of, like Melanie, 24. I never hear the bored. They may be busy, they may be stressed, they may be angry, they may be frustrated, but they're never bored. The key, and also working with this industry, the people that you see out at Show Me Wellington, those suppliers as we call them, they're just a good bunch of people. They want to have fun, they want to enjoy what they do. We want to make $1 out of it when we're doing it, but it's just a good, fun industry to be in. Key attribute, can you say that word for me? Key things. Key things I feel you need to work in my area in the association market is probably a little bit more administration focused than other areas of events. Obviously I said you've got to like people. It's no good if you want a job where you're not going to engage with people. You need to be incredibly detailed. And it's old-fashioned stuff. It's spelling, grammar, being able to proofread, administration skills. 90% of your an event manager's role in my company is administration, behind a desk, and computer, phone, email. You need to be able to manage and direct people well, and you need to be able to manipulate them when you want to as well, to get you pulling a group of diverse people together to get them to do what you want them to do. And you're dealing with all different personality types. You may be dealing with a caterer who has a different personality to a creative agency. So you get to bring all those people together, and there's a real good sense of satisfaction when it all comes together, and not like the Academy Awards, but when it comes off and it's success. And it's a real good sense of achievement at the end of it. Yeah, job well done, I managed to do that, and whatever little bit you had to do in there, it's a really good sense of satisfaction. And also a level of creativity is really helpful, and as Melanie said, different backgrounds are really useful. Theatre backgrounds to give you that creative bent, but you need to keep an eye on the finance too on the other end, so you've got to balance. So what Mel's saying is right, there's never a perfect person, you just got to make the best of what skills you have, or identify your strong bits and run with that. What I look for when recruiting, or what pathway you should take, BComs are useful. And sort of management, marketing, tourism, any hospitality, hotel experience, just to know that you've got that customer service bent, and you can work hard, because hospo is hard, and events, you can be working those sorts of hours that you're working in hospitality as well. But just make sure, and I think Melanie touched on it, just make sure there's different sectors, and they're all quite different, from events, festivals, corporate, association. Just do a little bit more investigation and just see which area or which sector you would like to be in. So I hope that's useful, or not, but at least you learned something about what do you call a group of lizards.
Thanks, Tracey. Kia ora, everybody. My name is Naika. Just a general question for the audience. I mean, events are a really broad industry, and there are a whole bunch of different areas of event managing you can get into, and a whole lot of different genres. So who's interested in perhaps like sports events? Yep, okay. What about sort of arts and culture events, music? Okay, and then there's sort of business events and conferences and things like that? Yep. So it's a really broad spectrum, but what I can say is, in general, the principles of event management apply across the board. And as Melanie alluded to, is that you can't shift the deadline on any of these things. So when event date is looming, you have to be ready to deliver. and usually there's a big team involved in those sorts of things. And my history, I guess, in event management has gone from organising student gigs at the student bar, doing touch tournaments and all sorts of stuff, to now I work with a place called the Wellington Regional Economic Development Agency. It's a bit of a mouthful. We shorten it to WREDA. WREDA manage this venue. They are the tourism arm for the city. They have the major events team, which I'm a part of, and they bring in the business growth and innovation side of things as well. So that agency is basically responsible, as I said, and it's in the name, it's economic growth and economic development for the city. And the idea is that if we can grow the economy here, then the city will prosper. So how do we do that through events? Well, major events bring a significant amount of economic boost to the city through out-of-region visitation, and so that's where we measure our economic growth. The more out-of-region visitors that come in, the more new money they bring into the region, the more spend they have in our retail sector, our hospitality industry, so they're buying clothes and buying food and beverages, and they're staying in our hotels, which is all very good stuff for the city and the economy. So my role, I brought these notes so I don't waffle too much offline. My role is the Events Development Manager. What that means is that I manage and assess event applications. So I'm not at the coalface of event delivery, I'm at an enabling level. We provide funding and sponsorship to events and major events to enable them to deliver, and in response to that we expect a number of different KPIs or key performance indicators, and that's largely around these out-of-region visitation numbers. So we pay you X amount of dollars, and in return you've said to us that you're going to bring so many visitors to the city. So I assess those sponsorship applications. We also coordinate and compile host city bids for big events, so that's talking about like World Cup events, the Lions Tour that's coming into town, the Royal Edinburgh Military Tattoo, those sorts of events, really big things that are available for cities to host, and host city bids aren't always exclusive. So when it comes to World Cups, we are one host city of a number of host cities in New Zealand, and that is a nationwide approach, but what we're trying to do is actually bring to Wellington some of the best matches that are on offer in order so those visitors do come to our city and spend their money. And then it's about contracting. So, it's all pretty dry stuff, but, it's important stuff in the context of major events for the city. One of the questions was put, well, what about my role gives me the most satisfaction? Well, for me, it's about helping shape the future calendar of major events for this place. The things that I'm working on are, 3-4 years down the track. So what events are going to be happening here in this place in that time? I also manage a team of advisors who work with our current event partners, and that's about helping them, I guess, improve or enhance their event to really leverage them and get greater returns on investment, and basically make their offering much more exciting and appealing to visitors. That's about enhancing the visitor experience. So when people come to Wellington, we want them to have a good time. It's more than just the event, it's about the whole experience of being here in Wellington. And I'd hope that, our whole agency would hope that people that come to Wellington to participate in anything go away with a really good experience of this place, and that they go away raving about it and saying, hey, we want to go back to Wellington. Next time there's something really good on, I hope it's there and I hope I can go back, because they've had a really good time here. The key attributes I think required to work in our industry, well, for me it's about being knowledgeable and being confident. You need to understand what the trends are and where they're going, and I think Tracey, you alluded to it before as well, is that you need to be confident to make decisions. And often, if you're at the coalface and where the rubber hits the road, and you have to make a call on whether an event goes ahead or not, you have to be confident enough to say yes or no. So that's a really important attribute to have. For me, diplomacy and tact is very important. You have to be able to communicate complex issues to people, and often those people don't work in our industry. So being able to communicate those issues in a way that they understand is really critical. So having really good communication skills is big. Patience and tenacity. You have to be able to play the long game because you're not always going to get people across the line on the first conversation. And that goes with suppliers and clients and sponsors and partners. You know, we have people who are trying to get money out of us and they play a really long game. Because if they can convince us that their event is going to do what we need it to, then, you know, they've done a good job. Empathy and awareness. From our perspective as, I guess, sponsors, you have to have empathy and awareness that events are high-risk businesses. There's a lot riding on an event to be successful, and the financial bottom line is a big risk. It doesn't take much for an event to succeed or fail financially, and that risk is sitting on someone's shoulders most of the time, especially for, you know, independent businesses and companies that work in this industry for a living. You know, the bottom line is ultimately what it means. There are other places or organisations that have backing of you know, local governments or bigger organisations to be able to underwrite them, but for most part it's a really risky business, and it only takes an earthquake to affect a business, and that rolls across events as well. And yeah, experience and understanding is really important as well. So just having that general understanding of the principles of good event management is really critical. You need to know what works well and why it works well. People go, well, why don't you go and move that event into that venue? Well, it's been at this venue for 20 years because of a reason, and that reason is because it works. So sometimes changing venue is not always a smart move, although it may be the vision to try and jazz things up again. What pathway would I recommend to those entering into this industry? Well, get involved in working with events, and basically volunteer roles are a really good start. Volunteer for a variety of roles. It's a really good inroad just for you to get exposure to what the machine is around event management. It's pretty complex. There's whole lots of different moving parts to it, but get involved because, you know, ultimately when it comes to I guess applying for event management roles, your practical experience speaks volumes. If you can say that you've worked in different parts of an event, whether it be marketing or administrative or you know, public-facing, ushering, doing all that sort of stuff, your experience is going to, you know, say a lot to me to know that you actually know what it's like to be at the coalface of event delivery. It's a very tough place to be, but, you know, we're still here, yeah. And, you know, those people that work events aren't all about the glamour and stuff. They're the ones that are the last people standing for most part of it. They're there at the close of the event helping the Portaloo guy load his toilet back onto the trailer. You have to be prepared to get in and get your hands dirty. So if you're not willing to do that, then you know, it's going to be a bit tough for you to actually explain to people that you know what you're talking about. And that's from me.
Okay, thanks, Drew. Kia ora. I'm Gibb. I work with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and I guess compared to the other speakers, we're more of a user, if you like, of event management companies. And we, obviously in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we do have events, and we also have a lot of inward visits programs as well. And where our engagement is, we look at things through an international lens, but we also look at it through a domestic lens. So we do a lot of big events through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I've been in the role for 4 years. It was a new unit that was set up to focus on delivering visits and events, not only for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but for New Zealand. So we have a major focus on that international engagement piece. What is the international visitor going to get out of coming to this event that we're hosting, that we're planning, but also what's in it for New Zealand. So that sort of drives our thinking in a lot of different ways that, say, a commercial organisation might look at things. Not necessarily totally different, but the drivers can be not the same as commercial impetus. And to give you a sense of the scale of events, and we've done things, for example, TPP signing event last year, love it or hate it, New Zealand hosted that event. That's a huge event, huge international focus, huge domestic organisational requirement. We bring down groups of foreign diplomats from other countries to take them on, expose them to New Zealand, the business sector, the commercial sector, sectors that we think will be of interest to that particular region of the world. So not only are we taking them into sort of conference settings, we're also taking them out to the regions to expose them to what New Zealand has to offer. So there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of engagement with our commercial partners, our commercial suppliers, to deliver successful events. So quite a different piece, if you like, to the way commercial sector gets involved. And of course, when you're dealing with international organisations and international countries, there's a whole lot of different sort of road blocks in your way, but different avenues that can end up going down. You know, language is one thing, registration, accommodation, getting people here in good time. I mean, New Zealand's at the bottom of the world, getting them to understand that it's worth their while to spend 48 hours sitting on a plane to get to New Zealand. So that messaging, that communications piece is a real critical aspect of our engagement. And, you know, if I look back over the 4 years, you know, you always learn a lesson out of different visits and events you host. But one of the, I think, key lessons that we learn right from the get-go is if you scope your event correctly from day one, you're never going to get everything right. That's just a given in event management. But if you can scope it and have a clear idea of what you want to achieve, what the end goal looks like, what success looks like, and what success looks like can be different for 3 or 4 different people sitting in the room. But if you have an understanding of what success looks like, then that really does help to shape the outcome of your event. And it shapes it in a lot of different ways, because if you know what the participants want to get out of it, what you want to get out of it, that can just feed into your planning. Your planning becomes a lot more structured. The outcomes that you're looking to achieve in your relationships with your key stakeholders becomes a lot more structured and beneficial for everyone involved. So for us in Foreign Affairs, if we're doing an event, what's in it for New Zealand? And once we unpeel that onion, that makes it a lot more easy to plan how we're going to get success and how that's going to impact on the economy in New Zealand, how that's going to impact on the stories that these delegates tell their people when they go back to their home countries. If we didn't do that piece of work, people would just turn up, you'd take them into a conference room, could be just another conference or event anywhere around the world. So doing that initial thinking, that initial planning around what success looks like, what your outcomes you want to achieve is a critical piece for us. And I guess if I'm looking for to recruit people into my team, and I've got to be careful because there's 3 of them here today, and they could be exceptions to my recruitment rule, but I guess what we look for in our team is a good understanding of the business. You know, what does the business want? What are the business drivers? A good understanding of risk management. You know, what are the risks around this particular event? You know, and we've got to look at it because we're a public service department. We look at the political risks, we look at the financial risks, we look at the event risk itself. You know, what's the risk of hosting an event in Dunedin as opposed to Queenstown, as opposed to Tauranga? So some of those occupational risks as well. So a good understanding of risk management is important for us. I talked about success. What does success look like? That's a really important aspect for us. Also look for people's skills, and colleagues on the stage here with me today have talked about communication skills, and I think that's a real critical piece. People can communicate clearly, both their point of view, but also articulate a plan, communicate outcomes. So communications is really important. Leadership, being able to lead the people you're engaging with through the process, through the delivery. So leadership doesn't have to be at the high level, it can be just at an operational level, getting people to come alongside with you, getting them to buy into the delivery, getting them to buy into the outcome. And that works when you have relationships with the event planners, with all the service providers. Some of that leadership, that communication is quite critical. Defining the outcome early, I see that as a critical piece. What do we want to get out of it? I've talked about that already, but doing that early on in the process. Common sense is a really good attribute. And common sense, I think, quite often gets forgotten when people sit down to do their Gantt charts and their timelines and their objectives. Throw a bit of common sense in there every now and again, and you'll be surprised what that delivers for you. And I think too often people get caught up in the process, and so common sense is a good place to revert back to on a regular basis. Eliminating the clutter. Quite often when people are planning large events, they scope out every piece of moving part for that event. And quite often, a lot of it is just clutter. And so eliminating clutter in your planning, eliminating clutter in your engagement with stakeholders, being clear, come back to that communication. That, again, is a real attribute and skill that I would certainly encourage people to look for. In terms of pathways, people have touched on that already. I guess volunteering at large events, that's a real useful experience build for yourselves. Experience in the hospitality sector. Experience working on a project. And that project could be anything from organising a school fair to organising, Round the Bays Run or something like that. But get involved in something that involves a little bit of planning. Sit in some of those initial planning discussions, even as a volunteer, if you can creep your way into the planning discussion. I think that really helps as well. But also roles where you're required to be a good communicator, where you might get involved in having to advocate a point of view, promote an event. So working through that sort of communication side of things, I think they're really a good attribute to work towards and a good pathway that'll give you the skills that you might need if you want to get into the events role. And I think for me, over time, what I've seen in terms of the events experience I've had, working at it in 4 years, is build up your networks. Start building up networks really early on. You need to go to event planners, you need to go to event suppliers, hotels, AV companies, but if you can build up networks, that is going to help you, it's going to give you a lot more confidence as you go through and try to plan and deliver your events. So that's a real quick tour of how I see it. It's a quick tour of our experience, but obviously quite happy to take questions later on. Thank you.
We have a wealth of experience up on the stage in different areas, of course, of the event industry, and like I said at the very beginning, it's changed an awful lot over a lot of years. It's broadened, it's challenging, it's a lot of fun, it's also a lot of pain. Do we have anybody out there who'd like to ask any of our panel a question about anything that you've heard in this presentation? Don't be shy, put your hand up because, yes.
Can I speak to that?
Of course.
I'm always impressed at when people submit their information or their CV to me on the off chance. Good on you. Yeah, don't wait. I may be encouraging an inbox of 40 or 50 applications here, but no. Yeah, but no, it just shows you're keen. Yeah, go for it.
I would second that, but of course, event management and organising generally, I suppose as a sector, conferences, events, very popular at the moment. They need to see it from our side. And so we welcome CVs as well. In fact, it's the first place that we go if we are recruiting. Sometimes people have moved on, but then we're getting into the whole CV side of things. Just make sure that you have a compelling CV and that you have done some event work. Because if you send in a CV that says I've been to your website and it looks like you do cool stuff, that's a bit of a turn off. We like to see someone who's been been seen to be keen. Anything else to add?
Yes.
Yep. Oh, sorry. I'll just add to that as well. Just in relation to CVs and stuff like that. I think there's if you haven't already heard of it, the New Zealand Association of Event Professionals. They send out job listings to all their members and things like that. So if you're not a member of that association, it's worth doing that just to be in the know of what job offerings there are coming up. I guess we as an agency, that we're not a delivering agency, but we do get inquiries every now and again. And the industry is relatively small, so often we will hear about people looking for staff. So if we've got people that are looking for jobs, then it's quite good to just try and connect the dots there.
Another question at the back?
In your experience, what is not taught formally that an aspiring event manager?
Everything.
Good question.
I just want to tell you that when I started, and maybe when some others started, there was no formal training, and so I'm not sure what they teach now, but I would say that the most important thing is that whole actually, how do you cope with pressure? What are your tools that you use to keep yourself organised and your plan on task? And then this whole business of being prepared to just work to the deadline and keeping everyone's spirits up. That I'm not sure if they teach that, and I don't know that you can learn it until you're in it.
Yeah, perhaps I'll just add to that too. I'm not sure what the syllabuses look like at different institutions, but again, understanding the breadth of events that are out there. So it's not just conferences, but there can be a whole range. So having a clear understanding of the breadth and the different sort of organisational structures that sit behind those. And I also come back, you can't teach common sense.
No.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Well, let's say a very big thank you to our panel of experts. They have done the hard yards, believe you me, and I'd like to thank them for giving of their time to be a part of today. So give them a round of applause, if you would, please. Thank you very much. I'll just, before you guys get up and go, be seated, thank you very much. Melanie started off with her introduction with the Oscars. I look at the Oscars from the event perspective, and she's absolutely right. I see it from another perspective, because I see it from a performer's perspective as well as an MC perspective. And I think that whole scenario could have been nipped in the bud by the guy standing at the lectern. All he had to do was look at what was written on his paper. And we all make mistakes in that. And I could see him looking at his piece of paper, and he's going like this. He's looking around. He's wanting somebody to help him out. He's an actor. He's not an MC. He's stressed. His co-presenter is well known for having very bad eyesight. So she couldn't see what was going on there as well. The MC should have recognized those signs, should have walked up there and taken control of the situation. Should have looked at the sheet and seen that it was a supporting actor's name and everything on that envelope, and said, I think there's been a mistake here. We need somebody to come and have a look at this and adjudicate. And it would have been fun, would have been taken care of. But I mean, and I think that's where event managers, such as what we have on stage today, have that knowledge, and what they do is they put the right people in the right positions to make the right decisions under pressure. And on that note, as your MC, thank you very much, and lovely to see you all. Go back on through to the main area, guys, if you feel like having a quick look around before we close off the proceedings for the afternoon.